we've been hearing about this as one of the, potential risks of the vaccine. We've been hearing about this for a long time. Can you explain to people what is myocarditis?
That should have caused a pause again, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We should have said, well, pump the brakes here. Let's just reconsider what we're doing here. And so if you don't get the vaccine, you're a problem.
Yeah.
And
you're going to kill grandma. You're going to...
Right.
Yeah.
So I refused to get the vaccine, so I was removed as the chief of cardiac anesthesia.
Hey, guys. So I've been talking about this one for a while. If you've been listening to my podcast for any length of time, I've told you that this interview is coming. Today I'm interviewing my friend, Dr. Blaine Achen. And Blaine is uniquely positioned to talk about COVID. We're going to go over his credentials in a little bit. One thing I can promise you is, unless you are in the very small handful of people who's been on the front lines of this for a long time, I assure you, you don't know more about this than Blaine does. He is a brilliant doctor. And oddly enough, when COVID was all completed in Alberta, they actually asked for a report to be written about COVID and how it was handled, so that we can make sure we don't make the same mistakes next time. We can do the right things last time, or do the right things again. Dr. Achen's the one who wrote that report, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about his personal story, all sorts of things. This is an episode you're not only going to want to listen to, you're probably going to want to share it with some of your friends and family who maybe have been in a little bit denial about a few things. So it's going to be a fun episode, new episode, Army of Great Men. Let's go. Blaine, thanks for joining me, brother. This is going to be awesome.
Oh, thanks for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure. It took us a while to get this figured out. My apologies. Lots going on in my life, and it's all good. But we're here today, and so let's have some fun and let's educate people about what's going on.
Yeah, it's I'm going to tell a funny story about how we originally met. So I'm from Saskatchewan, as all the best people are. And
so mom and dad are from Saskatchewan.
There you go.
It's all good. I got lots of heritage there.
That's right. You're an honorary member of the tribe of Saskatchewan.
That's it.
So anybody from Saskatchewan, that Saskatoon berries are like the best, right? Well, we stumble across this Saskatoon berry farm just outside of Spruce Grove, which is the town that we're closest to. And the biggest, fattest Saskatoons I've ever seen in my life. Like, if anybody's ever eaten them, usually they're like maybe half the size of blueberries. These ones are like as big as blueberries. They're just awesome. And anyway, we started talking to this lovely woman named Elmenia. And we start getting into a conversation, and she starts telling me about what you do. So you guys own what's it called again? The
Grove Berry Patch.
Grove Berry Patch. So if you live in the Edmonton area next summer, I promise you, come out here and do this. Come bring your kids. Pick Saskatoon. So it turned into a fun little sort of side hustle for you. You built this beautiful home. We're recording this from your home. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just right out behind me here is the best Saskatoon berry patch you'll ever find. It's amazing.
Yeah, thanks for the plug there. Yeah, I decided actually during COVID it was time to get out of the city. I'd always wanted to be on an acreage, and so we bought this place. It's turned out to be a lot of work. Ask my wife Amenla, and she'll tell you too much work probably. So we're getting some help on that front. But just love it out here. I really appreciate being out in the country here. I love what the rural Alberta has to offer, and there's a lot to offer there.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about how COVID sort of spurred this on for you. We're on an acreage in the area as well, and man, like during COVID, if we didn't read the newspaper, turning in, like, you wouldn't have known anything was even going on. Like, we were going for walks in the country every day, and lots of room between us and our neighbors. It was great. So anyway, aside from being a Saskatoon berry farmer, you've got a little bit of a history as a medical professional. Before we get into a bunch of the stories, give us your background. What's your role? Talk about your education. Let's first just go over some credentials here.
Sure. So why don't I start with a little bit of my background before I get into the credentials? So, born and raised in Edmonton, actually, born at the Royal Alexander Hospital. Mom and dad moved from Saskatchewan back at the beginning of the oil boom here, and my dad jumped in and got involved in that. Child of 5 kids in my family, now married. This is our coming up our 40th anniversary year. I got
Wow.
2 kids, 2 grown-up, successfully launched kids, and 5 grandkids, which I'm super proud about. So that's kind of a little bit of my history. Actually, now to bring it forward and talk about a little bit about my credentials, actually went to Bible college way back in the day. That's where I met my wife, who's from Northeast India, of all places, and from an interesting place called Nagaland. Fascinating place. Nevertheless, started a family, all of that. Was a pastor for 3 years, actually. So a lot of background there. Decided after doing that for 3 years to take a step back and started my family, and then looked around and said, "What am I going to do?" Not a good salesman. I tried that briefly. Horrible salesman. And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to go into medicine." Always enjoyed learning. Did very well in school. Went back to school and managed to get into medicine fairly quickly. Actually, after just 2 years of science, when they still did that based on grades and whatnot, and did medicine, did anesthesia, and then did a fellowship in cardiac anesthesia. Went off to Australia to do that. Enjoyed that immensely, and then came back and started my career here at the University of Alberta slash Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute.
And for those of you who aren't in Alberta, so Mazankowski would be the tops of the kind in for sure Edmonton, but maybe the province.
Sure. So we do two. I mean, Calgary also does cardiac surgery, as we do at the Mazankowski, along with a lot of other procedures. We have a huge catchment area, and we certainly do things in the Mazankowski we don't do down in Calgary. Not to dismiss Calgary at all. They do tremendous work down in Calgary as well. But I guess we do the heart transplants that we don't do in Calgary. We do lung transplants that we don't do in Calgary. And some of the more technical ventricular assist device and so on and so forth. So it's become a very well-known institution, and, was very proud to be there all this time. So it's been an exciting time for me, and, I got nothing but good to say about my experience there, and working with the people there was just tremendous.
I just want to touch on something just really briefly, and then we're going to get into your COVID story. But one of the things I really appreciate about you, and this isn't a shot at your colleagues, it's just a fact. A lot of doctors are not people of faith. And I think we all know doctors who, they get a little bit of a God complex themselves, right? And I get it. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're holding someone's beating heart in your hand, like gives you a different perspective on things than other people. But faith drives your life. Like this is who you are. It's a really important part of who you are and what you do. And you answer to one thing and one thing only, and that's God, that's Jesus.
So, and I think this really actually plays in well to, I think, what's going on in our culture today, specifically in medicine, but in every area, which is, and I hear this all the time when I talk to my colleagues and the people I work with, my friends, family members, is, what is truth? Where do we find out what's really real? That we can trust in. And so you need a framework for that. And as far as I'm concerned, that framework, you have to, first of all, understand what that framework is. So my framework's very clear. It's the Christian faith, which tells me that this universe has an intelligent creator, intelligent designer, and it makes sense and it's functional. There's things I don't like about it, and there's things many of us don't understand a lot about it. But that's how I begin that foundation, is that all truth is God's truth. Why? Because He designed it. We're just discovering what He designed, and it's awesome. When I went into medicine, it was just amazing. It floored me over and over again, the complexity and at the same time the simplicity at times of what God did with the human body, with what He did with the animal kingdom, you name it. And it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
fascinating stuff.
Well, and I think you touched on something that I think frustrates a lot of people with our medical world. And you just said we're still just figuring things out, but there are a lot of people in the medical world who, if you question anything, if you ask them questions about anything, it's blasphemy. It's like, how dare you question this? But, up until 20 years ago, that's what medicine and science was. It was asking questions to try to go, hey, we got to get better. And now there's this arrogance like, no, we have all the answers, but clearly you don't, because, people still get sick and die. And, like if that was the case, that wouldn't happen if we knew all the answers. But I wanted to make sure that I highlighted this part of your character and who you are, because, I've had enough conversations with you to know that you are far from arrogant. You're actually incredibly humble in spite of your experience and your status in the medical community. And it's super refreshing because you are seeking for more truth. You are seeking for more answers constantly. And I think part of, there's a lot of reasons why you look at what we did with COVID with the lens that you do, but part of it is that you saw that things weren't working. We need to do things differently. And so, I don't think the premier could have found somebody better to write the report that wasn't just going to just agree with everything. It was actually going to go, no, okay, we did this right, we did this wrong, So let's tell your story about the early days of COVID, because your story is a bit of an interesting one. So what are we talking here? 2020, started 2020. We start hearing rumors that this pandemic's coming over, and then it hits. And you're on the front lines. You're right there dealing with this. Let's talk about your personal story, how COVID affected you and your job and ultimately your career.
Yeah, sure. That's great. We'll pick up on some of the things you said just now later on in the story here. But, it's a fascinating and intriguing time. I started getting video actually from my wife's family members in Nagaland who are very near to China.
Yeah.
And they were sending over these little clips from social media showing people dropping in the streets in China, the packed hall rooms in the hospitals there. And you're like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it's on my radar. This was in the fall of 2019.
Yep. So I remember it well. I was just talking about the other day. They're showing videos of like welding people into their home, like welding their locks shut so they couldn't get out and infect people, and people, passing out on the subway. And yeah.
So you're like, okay, what is this all about?
Yeah.
So we started looking at it. And of course, everything began to happen in 2020. And then as we take a look at what's going on, and then we see Italy start to unfold and all that happened in Italy. And of course, there's a tie in there with China and Italy with the textile industry.
Right.
And so, of course, it went there. It seemed to go there relatively quickly. And then, of course, how do you stop it? And one of the things I said throughout this was, you cannot stop a respiratory virus. We've never been able to stop a respiratory virus. So we can talk about that later with some of the mandates that came down. But I think we were a bit arrogant in thinking that we could stop COVID with some of our mandates. And in fact, to just jump ahead briefly and then to come back to the story, we've never done what we did during COVID in our entire history as a Western civilization. We've never quarantined a healthy population. We quarantine sick people only. And so when we started to do that, my radar went off and I said, what is going on? Why are we going down a road we've never been down before?
Right.
We have no clue what we're going to do here. But, what are the consequences? Well, I thought they were bad, but I think we've proven that they were quite bad for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
At any rate, COVID hits. Look, it was serious, and it is serious. It started out extremely serious. Over time, the virulence of the virus as we know it is completely waned to the point where we see it now. It's not. It's similar to the flu.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, it's not what it was. That's for sure.
No, and that makes sense when we look at the course of most viruses. Is this waning effect that goes on as the virus mutates, and rapidly mutating virus. Now, the virus hits, and we had people at the time being extremely fearful of what was going to happen. And so what I noticed right out of the gate was the degree of fear that was in the community, both in the community and in the hospitals.
Yeah.
In fact, I can talk about one meeting I had while I was still chief of cardiac anesthesia at the time. Was they were continuing to report on the deaths of COVID that they knew about in Alberta. and specifically in the zone potentially. And I put up my hand and I said, if we're going to do that, can we also please talk about all the deaths that happened? Because COVID is still way down the list. It's not the number one killer, but when you look at what was going on, it's like, it seemed like the only thing killing people at that moment was COVID.
Right.
And it was like 10th or 11th on the list.
Yeah.
It moved up the list a bit, but clearly there were other things killing people at a much more rapid rate. At any rate, COVID hits. We did a lot of things to try and improve what we could do. Looked at ways of managing patients in a way that would benefit the patient and also keep the workers safe, the healthcare workers safe. All of that's fine because we weren't sure exactly what we were dealing with yet. So we were learning as we went. And I think one of the things that I discovered from writing the task, being part of the task force report, was we were all learning, and we need to be able to allow people to do that and not restrict what we do, what we think, and how we process that. And there was just too much of that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because like there are a lot of people who, they're still really angry about the way COVID was handled. But the thing that, like the people that are really angry, some of them are angry thinking that like all these answers should have been there right from the start, right? But it was unprecedented times. There were no answers. You had to figure, and in the early days, you had to treat this as though it was extremely serious because you didn't know. And so you couldn't be just flippant. And I think one of my worries is that if there's another one of these, that people are going to be overly flippant in the early days before you figure out, how serious is this? And caution is needed in those early days. And the fear is real. So, I think people, if you look at it rationally, there's people who have every right to be upset about some things that were done after we already knew enough to know that this is probably, these things were a dumb idea. But in those early days, it's not fair to be critical of the people who are making these decisions, because who the heck knew what to do, right?
100%. So I give a lot of space in those early days for the decisions that were made.
Of course.
And some of them weren't made, let's be honest, some of them weren't made on the science because we didn't have a lot of science to go on. And okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's now review what we're doing, and let's learn from it, and let's improve. So as COVID rolled out, and we entered into the mandates and the lockdowns, and then the different rules started to come in place. I was questioning some of it, not all of it, and then trying to learn as we went. And then my wife and I both got COVID, got it in the community. I stayed home. We got, diagnosed. Went for our.
When would that have been?
That would have been in, I guess, April. Hey, I think it was April is when that happened.
Okay.
And so it was likely the original variant or maybe Delta at that point. We weren't sure. At any rate, we did the right thing, stayed home. And the one thing that really struck me when we went and got tested, and then they gave us their advice, and I'm a physician,
right?
And how to take care of myself and how to take care of my family is like basically go home, stay home, isolate, no problem. Happy to do that. Try to keep my friends, family, colleagues at work, healthy.
Yeah, sure.
No problem. But then just stay home. What else do we have to offer? Nothing. If you can't breathe, come to the hospital. Okay. I think we can improve on that a little bit.
Right.
I hope so. Right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, this thing rolls out. We have COVID, yada, yada, yada. Afterwards, I decided I want to just see how my body reacted to this. So I went and got my antibodies tested.
Right.
As well as my wife's. And, it was off the charts.
Of course.
They read as high as you could read based on the test.
Right.
From the Mayo Clinic. And I was like, okay, my body seems to react appropriately. I have good antibody levels. I have immunity. This is good.
Right.
And then, of course, as we go through 2020 towards 2021, they start to introduce the vaccine. And at that point, and by the way, I should say a couple of things at this point. I have to be clear with your audience and anybody listening.
Yeah.
First of all, these are my views.
Sure.
They're not the hospital's views or anybody else's
right.
views.
Yeah. Thanks for saying
I wrote this report, and my chapter was specifically the vaccine chapter.
Right.
But I was a co-chair there was David Vickers, a statistician from Calgary, excellent statistician and epidemiologist. Gary Davidson, the chair, well-known physician in Red Deer, and a whole host of others that we use as contributors that we can list at the end of this broadcast because they all deserve credit.
Yeah, and actually, if you're looking at this, so we're going to put this report and then the list of contributors. We're going to put that all in the like whether you're Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube, you'll be able to see links to all of those reports there. So if you want to, stop and click on those, and you can actually have them open while we're going through this, it might be a good idea.
Yeah. So number 2, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've taken every vaccine up until this point.
Right.
I did have an issue with the flu vaccine back in 2010, I believe it was, when they were adding the adjuvant, and my shoulders swelled to about 3 times the size.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, not sure about
Maybe
this.
not do this one.
Not sure about this one anymore. But anyways, that being said, I started to hear things about the vaccine, and I decided I'm going to look into it. And one of the things I heard was they used a fetal cell line, an aborted fetal cell line to use this, build up the vaccine basically, and in its inception. So I said, I don't like that idea. I'm going to look a little bit more into this. In fact, I told my wife, if that's what happened, I'm out on this one. Maybe there's a different one.
Right.
And as I started to look into it, I got more and more concerned. More and more concerned because the vaccine came out in record time.
Yeah.
And never before we've seen a vaccine roll out this quick. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the thing that people forget about vaccines is critical. We give vaccines to healthy people.
Right.
Someone who doesn't have the very sickness, disease that we're going to vaccinate them against.
Right.
So they're healthy. So what does that mean? That means that the risk-benefit analysis better be highly in the favor of it being safe,
right,
and effective,
right?
Because otherwise, why would you take it?
Right.
The vast majority of the medicines we take are for conditions we have.
Right.
So we're willing to accept a little bit of risk in terms of side effects.
Right, because you already have that disease.
You already got the disease.
Right.
So a vaccine is not like that.
Right.
So it better be safe.
Yeah.
We better know a lot about it. And not only that, we're giving it to the entire population.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a step back. How much safety and efficacy did we know about the vaccine when we gave it? In my opinion, not enough.
Right.
Not enough.
Yeah.
My view. In fact, for those who are at the most risk, would it be worth it? Yeah, potentially.
Right.
Early on.
Yeah.
Right. So I told my dad to take the vaccine, consider taking it at the very start. Would I do that today? No.
You wouldn't do that.
Not on a chance.
No.
No chance at all.
Yeah.
Why? Because he was almost 80 years old at the time. He was obese.
Right.
He would tell you that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that about my dad, but anyways, he would tell you that.
Okay.
He was borderline hypertensive, i.e. high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And he didn't have diabetes. So he's got 2 of the 3 high risk markers for doing very poorly with COVID.
Right.
So early days, when we talked about it before the vaccine came, Dad, maybe you should think about taking it.
Yeah.
He took it. After the second shot,
he
was a very unhappy man.
Really?
And he let his son know. He was sicker than a dog.
Really, hey? Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, he's still alive. He's doing well. That being said, he still complains about things, but when you're 80 some years old,
sure,
complain about a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And then I looked at what we were doing and how the vaccine was being rolled out. I went to my the local authorities that I'm under in the hospital at Alberta Health Services. And I said, when they started the mandate, I said, I'm not going to take it. And I'll tell you why. Because I've had COVID.
You had the antibodies.
I tested my antibodies. They're off the charts, and so are my wife's. We're safe. I told my zone director, I said, I'm the safest guy in the hospital. I know my immunity.
Yeah.
I said, do you know yours? He said, no. I said, well, that to me is the more important thing, not whether or not someone put a needle in my arm, is that what's your immunity?
Right.
You can take a vaccine and you might not develop immunity.
Right.
So just putting a needle in someone's arm doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work.
And so with immunity, like you mentioned, like there's like a number, like a rating or whatever you've got. What was the desired immunity in terms of a number that someone would get from the vaccine? And what was your number?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have good numbers on what we think is the safe amount. I mean, they tested up to 150 on this particular test, and it said it was above that. It read over that.
Okay.
You know, those numbers, I don't think we still even know what's a good number that induces what we think of as immunity.
Yeah.
And that brings up some good points. Health Canada has, when we talk about the vaccine, because this is one of the big issues that I began to have with what was going on, was the vaccine in of itself. First of all, it's a novel therapy.
Right.
We've never used this. We've never vaccinated entire populations with an mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, that brings up a lot of questions. How do we know about long-term safety?
Right.
We don't. We had 6 months of safety data basically on it. And some of that was very slow in coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, when you look at what Health Canada says about what an ideal vaccine is, and then what the COVID vaccines were, there's a vast difference. So what did they say? They said an ideal vaccine should be basically an agent of some kind that after one dose induces lifelong immunity to that particular disease or condition.
Right.
And it's
not something you're supposed to take every 6 months.
And it's safe.
Right.
And effective, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, so stop. Ask your audience, does that sound like a COVID vaccine?
Absolutely not.
So when and in fact, the whole narrative shifted around vaccines at that time, is that, we weren't necessarily trying to produce sterilizing immunity, i.e. we stop this COVID-19 in its tracks and we don't transmit it.
Yeah.
And we don't get it.
Right.
So when you think about all the vaccines you had over the years as a kid, did you get those diseases? No, neither did I.
No.
That sounds like a pretty good vaccine.
Right.
I'm not anti-vax. Do I have questions now about vaccines in general? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
After what happened, you've now caused me to have some doubts.
Yeah.
As it were. And that's fine. Let's have the doubts. Let's have the discussion. And what happened was cancel culture has entered into medicine of all places. And what a horrible place to have cancel culture.
Well, and cancel culture that goes beyond any rational thought or reason. The biggest point being Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA vaccine. He was the inventor of the technology that was used to roll this vaccine out. And he's waving his hand, shouting from the rooftops, going, guys, this is not what you think it is. Do not do this. We have not tested, and then they try to cancel the inventor of the vaccine that they're rolling out. Yeah. It's just beyond absurd.
So, and these are some of the issues that I saw happening. I was like, this isn't healthy for medicine. Medicine is a place where we should be constantly critiquing what's going on. We should be looking at, reviewing the evidence. And so most people had no idea. And the actual Pfizer. So when I wrote the report specifically on the vaccine chapter, and of course we all contributed at this, it wasn't just me that were on the task force, but I was primarily responsible for it. I determined I'm going to use their own data. I'm going to use Pfizer's own data, right? Moderna's own data. Look, I'm not here. I don't have a bone to pick with anything. I just want to see what's been said because I want it to be rock solid. I don't want to say things that can't be backed up.
Yeah, and you can't make up your own data. So you've got to get it from somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's the dishonest way to go about trying to push your own narrative. And there's so many narratives out there. We need to be careful, right?
Yeah.
So Pfizer's own data, most people didn't even realize when you looked at all-cause mortality in their original RCT, over 20.
Sorry, what's RCT mean?
A randomized controlled trial.
Okay.
So Pfizer's own randomized controlled trial, over 20,000 people in each arm, the vaccine arm and the control arm.
Yeah.
The all-cause mortality was higher in the vaccine arm.
Right.
Now look,
and all-cause, just to really make sure everybody understands this. So all-cause mortality, what that means is you take all 20,000 people in both categories, and you just look at how many people died. You don't worry about what they died from.
Correct.
Any way they died, but more people died in the group that had the vaccine than the people who didn't. And it wasn't by a slim margin.
It's 23-17.
Yeah.
So anyways, this came out much later. But I mean, when I talk to my colleagues, one of the disturbing facts that I discovered was, it happens in medicine that we're so specialized and subspecialized.
Right.
We rely on the so-called specialists and subspecialists in each field, and we don't therefore need to necessarily look up the information.
Sure.
So it's easy to get, you might say lazy, but the actual reality of it is we don't have the time.
Yeah.
So we do rely on each other for some of this information. So when I talk to my colleagues, almost nobody's read that randomized control trial.
Right.
Nobody's looked at the supplement that included all the adverse effects.
Right.
And the all-cause mortality in some cases.
Right.
It was then, amended after it was given approval. So these things were all very, very significant in my mind.
Were there any categories of, side effects, illness, long-term this, long-term that? Were there any categories where the vaccinated people appeared to be better off than the unvaccinated people?
I have to say, early on, the people that were vaccinated, at the very early stage when it was probably the original alpha variant that was still circulating.
Yeah.
The people that were vaccinated, the data that we show in our report, seemed to be doing better than the people that were unvaccinated.
Right.
There's a caveat to that. I don't know how much weight to give it, and I haven't been able to really sort it out to the degree that I would have hoped to have. But you weren't considered vaccinated until 2 weeks after the shot.
Okay.
So 14 days.
So if you got sick and died within that 14 days, were you considered unvaccinated?
Correct. What does that mean? Well, that does change things.
Right.
Because you have been given this inoculant.
Right. So
given an mRNA.
If you died from, an adverse reaction to the vaccine, you would be considered an unvaccinated person who died.
So if you enter the hospital and or enter the ICU within that first 2 weeks, you'd be considered unvaccinated.
Wow.
I think, we have to question that because you've been given something.
Yeah.
You've not been not given something.
Right.
And the reasoning was good. The reasoning was that, okay, maybe it hasn't had a chance to produce the immune response.
Right.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
You can have that, but that needs to be discussed at fuller length.
Yeah. There should almost be a third category of the people who
were within
took the shot but haven't been completely.
Sure. Within the 2 week window.
Yeah.
It would have helped to clean up that a little bit. So it's really hard to know those numbers.
Yeah.
But the data still does show that early on that vaccine had an effect.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My concern wasn't in that. My concern was in how safe is it? That was always my concern.
Right.
When you look at the data, this is Pfizer's data. They rolled it out after 3 months. They were asked to do that. They had to do their post-authorization release of what's going on with this study. It's in our report.
Right.
It's damning. 1,233 people died within that first 3 months after getting the COVID shot.
Yeah.
Okay. The number of people that had something happen that they reported, 46,000 people. Okay, within that first 3 months.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry, is that just in Alberta?
No, that's everywhere. That's Pfizer's data.
Okay,
collecting from wherever they're giving it.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
So that is a problem.
Yeah.
When we look at VAERS, which is the vaccine adverse reporting system that was set up years and years and years, decades ago.
Yeah.
We don't see those kind of numbers for anything else.
Right.
That we're giving.
Right.
We just don't. That should have caused a pause again, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We should have said, well, pump the brakes here. Let's just reconsider what we're doing here. But again, there was some effect, and people seem to believe that the only way out of this at that point in time, including my colleagues, was you got to get vaccinated.
Yeah. And
we saw that shift, didn't we, in our society, where the vaccine became the only way out.
Yeah.
The only way out of this.
Yeah.
And so if you don't get the vaccine, you're a problem.
Yeah.
Hence,
you're going to kill grandma. You're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
So I refused to get the vaccine. So I was removed as the chief of cardiac anesthesia.
Right.
And fired.
Wow.
Told you get out of the hospital because you're a danger now. You're a danger and you're not conforming. So to me, I was just like, well, I showed you I have my immunity.
Yeah.
How am I a danger?
Right.
Right. So this was very problematic. They rehired us within a few weeks because they recognized they need people
to
fight the pandemic. But, at the end of the day,
Did they put you back in the same role you were in before?
No, I never got back to chief of cardiac anesthesia. That's fine. But I continued to do cardiac anesthesia after that.
Okay.
And what they did is said, you come back and you test. You had to test every few days and ensure that, in fact, I hadn't contracted COVID and was now infecting my colleagues and my patients again.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I'll do that. I could have said that from the get-go, but they didn't. At any rate, let's not go down that road.
Yeah.
Too far. That's long gone. It did change the course of my career. It did change a lot about how I view medicine and what it's become.
Yeah.
And I think that there's tremendous need, and I applaud actually the government into now saying, let's look at how we're doing medicine. Let's look at how we're giving healthcare to our citizens in Alberta.
Yeah.
It's so overdue. When we look around the world, we can see that there's lots of countries. Look at the Scandinavian countries, for instance, who, by the way, pulled the vaccine away from kids.
Yeah.
For good reason. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But anyways, they're doing great. They have higher benchmarks for a lot of the things they're doing. We want to talk about hip replacements, knee replacements,
right?
Wait times to get in for a particular surgery. They're doing better than we are and spending equal or less amounts of money per citizen per capita than we are.
Right.
So can we improve? Yes. But the problem is in Alberta, we seem to have this huge reticence, hesitation to say, hey, can we improve? And let's look at how do we do that? And it might not be all publicly funded healthcare, which it isn't in Scandinavia. There's Sweden, Denmark, Finland, you name it.
Well, I think, Blaine, part of what really pushed people over the top from being frustrated to angry was when, what was her name? Dina
Hinshaw.
Dina Hinshaw, she was the government representative who oversaw everything here in Alberta. And there would be these press conferences and they would ask her questions and she would give an answer. And the only response could have been, well, you're either not smart enough to know what's going on or you're lying. Either way, I don't want you in charge. And it made people really mad. Like I remember when this was sort of after things had calmed down, and people will forgive honest mistakes. They'll forgive them like crazy, but you got to admit that you made an honest mistake in order to get forgiven. Right. And, I'll never forget it. They asked her, they said, hey, during this period here, there were 0 cases of the flu. Like 0, like not 100, not 200, 0. Because people were wondering, like, are we sure that COVID tests weren't, that the flu wasn't triggering those too? She said no. And then they said, well, what do you attribute that to? And she said, well, that just proves that the lockdowns worked. We stopped the flu. And then they said, well, why didn't it stop COVID then? And then I can't remember her answer, but it was equally as infuriating as trying to tell people that for a 12-month period in a province of, at the time it was 4 million people, there were 0 cases of the flu, not one. And it's like, you expect us to believe that? How about you just go, hey, you know what? These are the decisions we made. We made them with the information we had at the time. We were wrong about this. We won't do it next time. People would have went, okay, they're humble enough to admit that. But when the government or anybody is making decisions that impact your life, we all know they're wrong. Well, not all. There's still people that wear masks in their car when they're by themselves. So you still see, so maybe not everybody, but people with their eyes open would look and go, my God, like you're still shoveling this down our throat and you expect us to believe it? Like just have some humility. So, sort of going off on that tangent, but what you just said there, I mean, it's needed in every area of life. Arrogance is my biggest turnoff in life. I love a little cockiness, a little swagger, but arrogance means I'm above any possible question that you might have. In medicine, we all know that we don't have all the answers. I mean, trust the science is not the right answer. Question the science is the answer. You're supposed to question everything, right? So anyway, sort of off on that tangent, but where are we in your story? So they fire you, they bring you back at a lower level, and then what? Then what's happening at that point?
Yeah. So, I mean, I carried on at that point, happy. I love what I do. I still get up every morning, looking forward to go to work, honestly, and do what I do. So, and love the people that I work with. So no problem. I was accepted back. I think people wondered why I took the stand that I took, which was I'm not going to take the vaccine.
Right.
But nobody complained to me. Nobody came up to me and said, why did you do that or anything?
Right.
And slowly, if people asked, I would share my story. But I was not out there as a, advocating, telling people don't do this, don't do that, but rather, what's the best thing to do? And I had concerns about masks. I had concerns. In fact, I'll tell you a very funny vignette because I think your audience would appreciate it. I was chatting with somebody actually within government about this, and they said, yeah, my father-in-law's in the medical profession as well. And he looked at me when they were discussing the whole masking issue, and he said, why in the world are we looking to mask to try and stop this virus? He said, look, we don't use chicken wire to try and keep a mosquito out.
Right.
Why do you think a mask can keep a virus out?
Exactly.
I had laughed when I heard that. I thought, oh my goodness. So, people get it. People can understand that. The virus is a tiny little particle, and our masks aren't that small. We're not going to keep it all out, nor the masks fit that well. So, there was a tremendous amount of faith put in masks that didn't belong there. And when you looked at what was said before the pandemic about masks, we knew this. And then it was like, okay, this is one of the ways. So again, a little bit, in my opinion, of two parts. One part, hubris, that we can stop this virus dead in its track with isolation and masks, and social distancing and all that. Two, versus, well, we're just trying to do something. Okay, we're trying to do something, but let's be honest about what it can and can't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the fear that comes from that, like, you'd see people that would know that this isn't working. And then you'd see other people who, the thought of being, in earshot or in sight of somebody who didn't have a mask, like they might as well have been holding a gun to their head. They were terrified.
Mm.
And, I think a lot of the people who are wired to just trust whatever they tell you, it terrified them, it crippled them. And I think they're still feeling the psychological effects of that today. Like, go to it's Christmas season, go to the mall. I bet you 20% of the employees at the mall are wearing the mask right now today.
Yeah, and I'm still kind of, I'm actually not surprised by it because of the fear. I mean, getting back to that original point, I mean, people had a term for it, they called it fear porn, because it was just everywhere and it was just so pervasive.
Yeah.
It was like you were trying to scare the living daylights out of everyone. You need to be aware, you need to be cautious. And as we said, early days, the caution is very helpful. It's useful.
Yeah.
And as we learned, and so let's get back to risk benefit analysis, right? Let's get back to who was this virus going to seriously injure or kill?
Yeah.
Well, we knew that early on. That data was very clear. You're 75 years of age or older.
Yeah.
Age being the most important risk factor.
Yeah.
For how you're going to do with COVID.
Yeah.
Hence, I told my dad, you're in that bracket. You're older than 75.
Yeah.
Overweight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes.
Right.
You have those. You're the one at risk. You're at risk. You're the most at risk.
So, Blaine, people that were hospitalized for COVID, percentage-wise, vaccinated, forget about whether they were vaccinated or not. How many people that were in the hospital were either over 75, obese, hypertension, or diabetic? Percentage-wise, how many people in that one, at least one of those categories that were in the hospital?
Oh, the vast majority of people that entered hospital were in that category.
Like more than 95%?
I would say probably. I mean, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. We put graphs there, and I have to go back and refresh my memory. I'll direct you to the report, and you can see the graphs in there about hospitalization, ICU, and death.
Yeah,
we do know that was clearly the case, and that data played out not just here in Alberta, it played out around the world.
Right.
Okay. Those are the people it was going to affect. We knew that it wasn't affecting kids.
Right. And knew that early.
We knew that early. So, I mean, in Ontario, they had a study that came out that clearly showed out of well over 30,000 hospital admissions, only 140 of them were were kids. Less than 1 in 40 were kids.
Yeah.
So that's a tiny percentage of the overall effect. And we there's reasons for that, and we get into that in the report as well. So we know that's who's it's affecting. So my inclination would have been, and many others, those who signed the Great Barrington Declaration were of the same opinion, that let's target the at-risk population.
Yeah.
And let's put our resources there. Let's not lock down the entire population.
Right.
Because you and I were never going to be killed by COVID. Just like you and I know the cold isn't going to kill us under normal situations.
Right.
Do healthy people die from things like this? Rarely. Yes. Rarely. Very, very rarely. We had young people in the hospital who have other conditions that make them more susceptible.
Sure.
Got it. Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to treat you.
But a healthy 18-year-old kid who's got, none of the other issues you're talking about, COVID is a nothing burger for them.
This is across the board. This is what the data shows. Look, we shouldn't be trying to scare people into taking a product, a vaccine, an intervention without good data. And we saw what happened. It was all over the news when it was reported that this, I think it was an 18-year-old young man died.
Right.
He died of COVID when actually he died of his brain condition. Right.
We should go over this story. So he had a brain tumor, correct?
Yeah.
And also had COVID when he died, and they said he died of COVID, even though he died with COVID, but he really died of a brain tumor.
And that came out, and that was discussed later, and the story was retracted, and that's great. But why was it reported that way? So there were lots of people. Yeah. Correct. There were lots of people who entered hospital also with COVID, not because of COVID,
right?
I.e., their diabetes, their COPD, their chronic obstructive pulmonary disease brought them in, right? Their bronchitis, their asthma, whatever it is. They also have COVID,
right? Or
they had some other disorder. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
When you're sick and fighting something else, any virus or bacteria is going to take advantage of it, if it can. So, so we needed to separate that out, and there was admission, good for them, later on, that some of the numbers that were reported as in hospital because of COVID were not because of COVID, but with COVID.
Right. So if you came in with a car accident and you tested positive for COVID and you died from your car accident, they would put you down as a COVID death.
Yeah, and it was a different story. Correct. There was a different story here in Canada versus down in the US. And so a lot of what we read, and see on the internet, a lot of that may come from the States.
Right.
Where it was very clear that the hospitals were getting paid for taking care of COVID patients. So now you got, sadly, a financial inducement to have people diagnosed with COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I read some ridiculous reports. I never verified that they were actually true. And you need to these days. But, someone who was injured in a motorcycle accident, who succumbed from his injuries down in the States, who was listed as dying from COVID. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's clearly a case of, you come in and they may test you and you have COVID.
Right.
But it's not the COVID killing you at that moment in time.
Yeah, exactly.
So those kind of things sadly did happen. It was corrected. That's well known. That is reported here in Alberta. And there was some measures taken to correct that. Good for them. I give them full credit.
So just tying a bow around this, should healthy kids have taken this vaccine?
So my opinion, it's my opinion.
Yeah. We're
all allowed to our opinion. And the task, if you read the report, one of the recommendations is absolutely not.
Right.
I don't think so for two reasons. One, the risk-benefit analysis wasn't in the child's favor.
Right.
Their risk of getting serious COVID illness was extremely low.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean your child's not going to get COVID and had developed some sickness.
Yeah.
Many kids were asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Two, we didn't have any good long-term safety data. I'm dealing with a child. I'm dealing with a 6-month-old and upward.
Yeah.
Or I'm dealing with a young male, and this was well documented, the risk to myocarditis and pericarditis in healthy young males.
Yeah.
Clearly, and when the numbers were looked at, it wasn't a greater risk for them to develop myocarditis from COVID infection. It was a greater risk from them developing it after the vaccine.
Yeah.
And so I made it very clear in the chapter. My recommendation is that this should be pulled from the market until we have better safety data and efficacy. And by then, the vaccine's already mutated. It's now not nearly as dangerous as it was before in terms of mortality and morbidity, i.e. bringing people into hospital extremely sick and needing to be in the ICU and or dying from COVID.
Yeah.
Do our elderly still die from the flu?
Of course they do. Of course they do. It's always been the case.
So you're still going to have people who get extremely sick with COVID. I'm not diminishing the danger to our especially elderly population with COVID.
Yeah.
It still is going to happen just like it does with the cold, the flu, you name it.
Yeah. Blaine, people hear myocarditis, we've been hearing about this as one of the, potential risks of the vaccine. We've been hearing about this for a long time. Can you explain to people what is myocarditis?
So myocarditis in its simplest form is just inflammation of a heart cell, of a muscle.
Does it go away?
Pericarditis is the inflammation of the tissue that surrounds. It's like a bag, as it were, around the heart. And the heart sits in this bag, and there's a tiny bit of fluid in it, generally speaking. And the heart simply does its pumping function from within this pericardial sac, we call it.
Okay.
And so either one of those can get inflamed.
Right.
And we see that without COVID, people develop pericarditis for different reasons.
Sure.
Infections and things, different disease states, cancer even cause it.
Yeah.
Myocarditis is the more concerning one in the sense that inflammation of the heart can cause damage to the heart muscle itself. And some of this can settle down with medication and different things. We usually require rest and not physical and strenuous activity, these kinds of things, and let the heart settle down from the inflammation. But when you look at myocarditis overall, especially if young kids get it, it does carry a certain amount of risk to it. And we document that in the report, that these reports have been done when you look at long-term studies of kids who had myocarditis. So it's not a benign thing, that is, I cut myself and now
it's kind of a big deal.
It's healed itself and it's better. Do we know? We have no idea which patient would go on to develop a more serious form of heart damage than others. I don't think we know that at all.
Right.
But we do know that if we treat it and get on it right away, that we can offer benefit. But I don't have a crystal ball. And I think if you talk to most cardiologists, they don't have a crystal ball on who will suffer long-term damage from myocarditis and who will, whatever the cause.
Yeah.
So forget about what caused it. But we do know that we take it very seriously because it's your heart.
And I'm assuming, but I'll get you to verify it, that the number of cases of myocarditis, people who had it, was a lot less in 2019 and earlier than it was 2020 and later. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, there's a number of conditions that sprung up, this being one of them, amongst our young, healthy male population. And
does that affect males more than females?
Yes, clearly. And I don't have a good answer for that as well. But if you look at guys like Peter McCullough, who are researched on some of these things, he made it very clear that this was a big problem. And when we looked at the literature, when we were writing the report, it was very clear that this was an issue. It was known about.
Yeah.
And, we needed to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was one of the reasons why I said, look, let's not take the risk with our young, healthy infants, children, minors, just call them minors, if you would. Why would we take that risk when the benefit is so low?
Yeah.
Why? We have a well-known risk, myocarditis. It does affect kids. You can't choose which one is going to get it and which one has.
Right.
So my issue was, and one of the things I brought up in the report is that we need to have a proper discussion with our patients about what the risks are, and what the benefits are, instead of just putting it out there saying, if you don't get this, you know what, it's not good for you and it's not good for your family and your community.
Right.
You're putting everyone else in danger. Like, that's coercion, in my opinion.
Well, and I think I know for my brother, and I know he wouldn't mind me saying this, but when he did this, he did it because, his wife's a nurse. Stop the spread, do your part, right? Because that was the way they talked a lot of people into it. People that recognize that, you know what, like, I'm not too worried about this. I already had COVID. I'm okay. They did it because they were they were under the impression that if they did this, it would stop the spread. And then, of course, we learned not too long after that it did not stop the spread. That's what really made a lot of people angry, because they thought they were doing this for others, then it didn't help others. And they're like, well, so wait a sec, your vaccine only works if I get mine? Like, sounds a little crazy.
So and that changing narrative that was put out on, mainstream media and from our own, health authorities and whatnot around, not just in Alberta, but around the world, was also a very disappointing thing to see.
Yeah.
And all of this was known when you look at the original. I mean, go back again. Everyone forgets about that original data that was there. It was never tested for transmission.
Right.
But what we said was, if you get it, and this was infuriating to me because I was coming back from a trip the day they introduced some of that restriction exemption.
Well, like after you leave, you got to quarantine for 2 weeks. And
well, not just that, but now, unless you have a card showing that you've been vaccinated, you can't go into restaurants.
Right.
You can't go into sports facilities. You can't do all those things. Well, I was coming back in the airport when this hit from a trip, a kayak trip with a couple of my colleagues. A wonderful time in BC. And I hit the airport, and I couldn't go into the restaurant because I didn't have this card because I wasn't vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I said to the guy, but I can show you my antibody level. Yeah. He goes, yeah, that doesn't work. So my colleagues went into the restaurant and I had to stay outside.
Yeah.
In the airport lobby. And I thought, wow, it really hits home.
Yeah.
And so the infuriating thing about that is that the vaccine never stopped that transmission.
Yeah.
We know that, nor was it tested in original randomized controlled trial if it would do that.
Yeah.
So why did everyone push that narrative? That to me was really started to bother me, is that, whoa.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then it changed, right? And then, the whole, like I said, that whole idea about a vaccine changes. It's like, come on, guys. Like, we can't just change these definitions and what it does and doesn't do on a whim when it's pointed out that it never could do that.
Well, and again, like I actually had I could feel a reaction in me when you were saying that, because I was just having flashbacks to, I didn't get vaccinated, our family didn't. I had no problem with anybody else getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
Like, I was so happy if somebody else went and got it and they felt good, like, oh, now I feel safe. Great. I'm glad you feel safe. This is how I feel safe. And I actually put a video out to my family, my extended family, which is still a little bit fractured over all this. I said, like, guys, what the highest form of love is? It's when you trust other people to make their choice, right? I trust you. I trust your intelligence. I trust your gut instinct. If that's telling you that you should go get this vaccine, I trust you and I'm happy that you'll get it. But I need you to extend the same courtesy to me, because now we already know that whether or not I get the vaccine has nothing to do with you. It has no impact on you or anybody else. This is my, my body, my choice. That, they seem to be, a lot of people are very conveniently selective with that.
Correct.
But yeah, I just remember saying, like, look, I trust you. I trust you completely. If you think this is the right thing for you and your family, I'm not going to judge you. Fill your boots. Get 10 vaccines. I don't care.
Yeah.
But let me make mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with a lot of that, because the reality is, we shouldn't be coercing people to take any medical intervention whatsoever, in my opinion. We need to give good information.
Yeah.
And then trust you to make a good decision.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we still do that with a lot of things. We allow people to make choices about their lifestyle that may or may not be that healthy, according to my view.
Sure.
Right? What you eat, what kind of things you ingest, recreational drug use, all these kinds of
Nobody
things.
won't invite you to Christmas because you drink 24 Diet Cokes a day.
Might say it might be a bit too much Diet Coke in your diet, but things like that. So we thought one of the best ways to deal with what was going on was to simply do that. Say, let's put this on the individual physician, and pharmacists who are encouraging people to take the vaccine. We'll give them free, full, and informed consent. Here are the risks. Here are the benefits. Here's your risk category. Here's the benefit for you taking this intervention or not.
Yeah.
Like we do with every other medicine.
Right.
We sit down and we talk about, here's your benefit. When I talk to patients about me giving them a general anesthetic versus regional anesthetic,
I
talk about the risks and benefits and say, what would you like?
Yeah.
And I'll give my opinion, what I might do if it was me or my family member, or I'm not going to do that up front. I'm going to let them decide. And then if I think it's it might be a bit more benefit to do something one way versus the other. I'll tell the patient that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you don't want this procedure, you don't, hey, I'm not coercing you. You can walk out of here right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tie you down, take you in the operating room, and give you an anesthetic.
Yeah.
I mean, that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to make it so that you feel like you have no option either.
Right.
I'm going to give you the choices at the end of the day. And I may push that risk benefit analysis stronger if I think that you're making the wrong decision, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to force you.
Right. Blaine, what do you know about people talk about long COVID? There's not really a word for long vaccine injury. I mean, there's still a lot of people that, they're looking for answers. They know they're not right. What do you think are some of the most negative long-term impacts that people are experiencing who had a negative reaction to the vaccine?
I mean, that's a tough one. So for a lot of reasons, I don't think we have good data on how many people have been affected, and to what degree and what specifically they've been affected by.
Yeah.
The original trial demonstrated, like I said, 46,000 people were injured in that first 3 months.
Yeah.
Of the 46,000, there was a significant percentage. I can't pull the number at the top of my head, but I think it was 8,000, almost 9,000 of those 46,000 at the time that report was released, which was 3 months after that they said these people are still having the same symptoms. They haven't gone away. They haven't recovered from that initial injury from the vaccine. So how going forward from that, I have no idea. One of the things we recommend in the report was maybe what we should have done, and we should have done it a long time ago, was set up some kind of phone-in line where people would say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, whether it's caused by COVID-19 infection, which we know can happen, or the vaccine, but we can report it.
Yeah.
And I don't care at the end of the day what you call it, because at the end of the day, the patient doesn't, I don't think, care that much either, in the sense that they just have this symptom now.
Yeah.
And what do I do about it?
And
where do I go? Where do I go? So we suggested setting up some kind of a phone-in clinic, as you were, or center, that people could just say this. And then we could start to look at it in detail and offer help.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do as physicians, right? Is offer people some help. How you try and delineate is very difficult. And let me make one last statement about the randomized control trial of Pfizer. Again, this is not my opinion. This is data.
Yeah.
Go look it up.
Yeah.
They stopped the randomized control trial after 20 weeks. So we no longer have any data going forward for those people who took the vaccine versus those who did not.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, because that could have probably given us some information about, of the people who have a bad reaction. It's not everyone, obviously. It's a small minority of the overall number, but it's just not an insignificant number, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to those people? Because now we've confounded it. We invited them all to get the vaccine. We no longer have a control group.
Yeah.
That would have helped with that question.
Right.
And that, again, to me, was a very, very unfortunate, I'd have to say, to be most charitable mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That we need that control. We needed those people to not have the vaccine. Now, the argument is, I get the argument. Well, it's early on. We want to offer these people the same benefit we think this vaccine is going to offer them. I'm not saying it was malicious, but I am saying it's incredibly unfortunate because we don't have that data now.
Yeah.
So what do we do now? Well, now we can help people and offer them help if they've got long COVID, whatever the cause.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but is it a big number, a small number? I have no idea. I'm not a family physician. I think the family physicians and emerge docs would get more of that information.
Yeah.
But I hear it all the time. I hear people, people have different types of reactions. Vertigo is one of them.
Yeah.
Tinnitus is another one. The ringing in the ears, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The dizziness.
Well, then there's other people that are worried about, like you hear stories of turbo cancer and infertility and women who, got vaccinated while pregnant, and birth defects and things like that. And those things happen anyway, right? Like some people, infertility isn't new, cancer isn't new, birth defects aren't new. But when you refuse or you prevent the data from being analyzed so people can get numbers, they're in actual facts, and their mind is obviously going to go to the dark side, and they're obviously going to assume that. And actually, it dovetails nicely. We're going to pause for a second, I'm just going to pause for a commercial here, tell you about the sponsor of our show today, which is actually from the wellness company, which is Dr. Peter McCullough's company. So just take a listen to this, people, and we'll get right back in a second. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this interview with Dr. Blaine Achen. A lot of the stuff you're hearing on this, I've already spoken with him before, so some of this isn't news to me, but I remember hearing it for the first time and just mind blown the whole time. Guys, when you're listening to this, if you're having regret about taking the vaccine, if you're wishing you didn't do it, if you're worried that maybe there are some long-term impacts from the vaccine that maybe haven't manifested yet, or maybe you haven't felt right since you got it, guys, I've signed on with the Wellness Company. If you don't know what the Wellness Company is, it's a company run by Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, who's one of the leading vaccine experts in the world. He was one of the people, shouting from the rooftop saying, hey guys, do not take this vaccine. If you're healthy, do not take it. It's not what you think it is. One of the things that he's created is a spike detox. This is to get that spike protein out of your body. It's had rave reviews. It's all natural ingredients. And if you use the discount code, my discount code, it's like $80 US for the bottle. If you want to order it, go to www.twc.health.aogm for Army of Great Men. www.twc.health/AOGM. I'm going to put the link in the bottom of the podcast as well. Do yourself a favor for your peace of mind, and for those around you, for other people who will regret taking it. Spend the $80. It's less than a bag of groceries, for Pete's sake. Spend the $80. Get this stuff out of your system. Learn from your mistakes and move on to the next one. Anyway, so that commercial for the Wellness Company, I've just signed on to promote some of their products. Dr. Peter McCullough I have so much time and respect for Dr. Peter McCullough, the work that he's done, the sacrifices that he made in order to try to give people answers. And so if you're listening to this show and you took the vaccine and you've always wondered, right? Like maybe you wonder why this feels different or that feels different, and if you don't feel that, great, like that's awesome. But this protocol that he's come out with is designed to remove that spike protein from your body, and maybe help give you that peace of mind. And again, what I was saying just before the little commercial there, I think it's the unknown that really bothers people, right? Like it's one thing once you've been properly diagnosed and you have your answer and you have this, and then you're given a track to run on to work on fixing it. That gives you peace of mind because at least you know which direction to point. When you're just sitting there scratching your head going, I don't know what's going on. Everybody's saying I'm crazy. They won't tell me this, but this doesn't feel the same, or this doesn't feel the same. If that peace of mind, you can buy this protocol for not a lot of money. I don't know about you, but peace of mind is pretty valuable to me. So, we've got a little promo code for you there. I really hope that, treat yourself to this thing. And I think the peace of mind you'll get from it will be really impactful. And then, what else? If you know people, if you yourself aren't feeling, but people who are, buy them the gift, right? Spend, I think it's $100 or whatever it is, not a lot of money. Buy the gift for them. Give them that peace of mind, because apparently it's been very, very effective. I mean, obviously I didn't get vaccinated. I don't need to do this, but, there's a lot of people that do. And I just can't imagine how frustrating it would be to have trusted this, to have been one of the unfortunate people who had an adverse reaction, for people to tell you you're crazy about your adverse reaction, and then just to sit there going, look, I know how I feel. What do I do? So anyway, I hope if you're feeling that way, you make that order and use it to not just heal yourself, but to give yourself that peace of mind. It'd be great. So anyway, Blaine, there's some other things. We're going to talk about your report here in a minute. I know you want to, quote some things from it and some specific things. Can we talk about a couple of the protocols that were used early on with COVID that turned out to be very wrong? I know the ventilators were a problem. Remdesivir was, we're going to talk about remdesivir in a minute. our Canadian government's refusal to still allow ivermectin in the company. So actually getting back to the wellness company, you can buy ivermectin, which has lots of wonderful qualities. It is, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure it's the most prescribed drug on planet Earth. The man who converted it from something for livestock, horses and cows and stuff, they converted it to a human form pill. He won the Nobel Prize for doing this because it has almost zero downside. It's a parasite removal. It's been known to fight cancer. Like, there's all these things that ivermectin does. What's interesting, so I've signed this deal with a wellness company, and they sent me some samples of some of the things, but the ivermectin that they sent me was an empty bottle because you cannot bring it into the country. So I'm sorry to my Canadian listeners, you cannot buy ivermectin from the website that I'm doing here. You can. It's funny the things that you're allowed to take and the things that you aren't, but the safest, most prescribed drug on earth is illegal in Canada still, which is a whole different conversation. We don't have enough time to get into that today. But let's talk about some of the drugs that they used early on, specifically remdesivir, and how that worked, and sort of the insanity around it all.
Yeah, let me back up for a minute because we have a chapter in a report on therapeutics.
Okay.
As I mentioned early on, one of the things that shocked me with the pandemic was what we were telling people: just go home and then come back to hospital if you can't breathe.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble breathing, come back to hospital.
Right.
Nothing else. So it's natural for a physician to say, well, can we not try something? Will something not work? Not crazy things.
Yeah.
But things that, okay, what's the rationale here? What do we know about these different therapeutics, these different medications that are out there already? And by the way, one of the things, I'll take a further step back, that I've documented in the report specifically, was that the federal government did put together legislation that allowed for drugs to be repurposed and used during COVID.
Right.
It also allowed for, and this is how we got COVID through so rapidly, it also allowed for us to trust another regulatory body, i.e. the FDA or CDC,
right,
and rely upon their findings to then bring the drug in, or vaccine or whatever it is, therapeutic in, to be used here in Canada during the pandemic.
Right.
And that's helpful. But it allowed for the repurposing of drugs. It says that right in this particular document. It's included in the vaccine in chapter. I put it there for that reason.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what was happening was, family physicians trying to offer some help to their patients, or saying, hey, can we not try something? Could we not try vitamin C? Could we not try vitamin D?
Yeah.
Could we not add some zinc in? And there's a rationale for all of these things.
Sure.
Hydroxychloroquine was one of them early on. Ivermectin was one early on.
Yeah.
And we can go down the line, fluvoxamine, which is actually an antidepressant drug. All of these came to the fore as potential good either prophylactic or early treatment medications.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, let's see where this goes, right?
Right.
And sadly, what happened was there was a shutdown. There was a narrative that came out, and there's lots of discussion around this on the internet, that none of these are good or helpful. There's only one way out. It's the vaccine.
Yep.
Right. And I think that narrative was very unfortunate.
Oh, yeah.
Because we need to, as physicians, look for ways to treat people before they come into hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. To treat them. I mean, we do that all the time. That, prevention is always better than treating someone after they have a disease, a malady to treat them for. So let's look at that for a minute. And we have to start. We can start with hydroxychloroquine if you like. And I wonder at times if a lot of the, narrative that surrounded that was because of, President Trump at the time saying, this could be the miracle cure, is hydroxychloroquine. As physicians, we don't look to politicians or anybody to just make statements and then we say that that's true or that works.
Right.
I'm sure somebody said something to him. He then repeats it, whatever. Hydroxychloroquine, as we know, they came out with some studies early on that basically said, no, it's dangerous.
Right.
And let's pull it. One of the studies they used was printed in the Lancet, was then later determined to be fraudulent and was retracted.
My God.
Okay. So there was some of this stuff going on. When I looked at that, I was like, well, that's kind of bizarre. You looked at some of the doses that were used and you're like, why are they using such a high dose? Those kinds of things went on. Okay. So it was like, there was no recommendation to use it. But actually, a lot of the studies, document the review of hydroxychloroquine and all the drugs I just mentioned. Therapeutics are in the report, and we show after doing meta-analyses that were done on them that whether we thought they might be helpful or not. And hydroxychloroquine is not that. We give it it's an antimalarial drug.
Right.
We give it all the time. We know its safety profile.
Yeah.
Move forward to ivermectin. Ivermectin was even more disappointing.
Yeah.
Ivermectin is a drug, and most of my colleagues, when I asked them, couldn't tell me. By the way, I love my colleagues, and they were very supportive of me. I'm not trying to diss them. But just to demonstrate again how much we rely on our colleagues, our other specialists around us, to keep us up to date and let us know what's going on. Because of the mainstream narrative that was pushed out on ivermectin that it was a horse dewormer.
Yeah.
It was for livestock.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Right.
But
it's also
important piece that nobody seemed to realize was it's curing river blindness and has cured river blindness around the world.
Yeah.
Elephantiasis. Most people know what elephantiasis is when these people get these huge swollen limbs from a parasite that invades and blocks their lymphatic system. It's curing that. It won the Nobel Prize, as you rightly said, in 2015.
Yeah.
Not for veterinary medicine.
For humans.
For dealing with these diseases in Latin America and Africa. And I'm like, okay, so pump the brakes here. Mainstream media comes out, pushes this horse dewormer narrative. And I sat back and I said, so who's going to stand up and say, well, that's not true.
Right.
It does do that, but we also use it in humans.
Right.
And have for a very long time with a remarkable safety profile.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's safer than Tylenol, aspirin.
This is well documented.
Yeah.
So where I understand the concern, and I'm going to come full circle on this. I understand the concern of using a veterinary version for people versus the one that is prepared for people, which is a different dosage, big deal, how much you're taking, and some of the ingredients that are put in it versus the livestock version. Get it, got it, absolutely. But why then do you shut down ivermectin altogether and only say it's for livestock?
Yeah.
So this is a big problem. And so I looked, and to my dismay, I didn't see any medical authority stand up and say, wait a minute, guys, this narrative that's been put out is not accurate.
Right.
It is for livestock, but it's for people. Let's just pause and see, is there benefit without just throwing it away on the basis that it's only for livestock?
Yeah.
Bad idea. So guess what happens? Fast forward 2022. 3 doctors in the States successfully sue the FDA for that well-known commercial. What did they say in their social media feed? You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Stop it, y'all.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah.
They were successfully sued and they had to take that down because it's not accurate.
Yeah.
The FDA of all people is trying to say, you shouldn't use this. This is for cows and horses.
Yeah. And
in the meantime, it's curing river blindness for people around the world.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like I know there were some countries in Africa, and I believe maybe was it India as well, they were giving out these little prophylactic packs, which were ivermectin, zinc, and I believe it was vitamin D, right? And you just, because like they're, countries like that, like they give them out like crazy. Like every time I traveled to Mexico, I was in Colombia last year. Like I go to the pharmacy, I buy all the ivermectin I can take. Like I'm well stocked at home because you can't get it here.
Yeah.
And I did a show very early on in my podcast where I talked to someone about parasites and how pretty much everybody like if you have a pet or you eat sushi on a semi-regular basis, like it's almost a guarantee you have parasites. And it's one of the easiest. Ivermectin doesn't get rid of all parasites, but it gets rid of a lot of them.
Yeah.
And like, so you look around, like everybody you see has parasites. They do. Like we should be doing parasite cleanses, at least once a year, probably 2. The safest and easiest way to do that is with ivermectin. And you can't even do it. You're not allowed to do it here. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. To your point on ivermectin, and to kind of maybe tie a bow around this one is it does eradicate a lot of parasites.
Yeah.
And I think cestatodes and nematodes, I have to check again on some of this stuff, but it doesn't seem to have action for, but many of the other parasites. It has great anti-parasite activity.
Yeah.
So we use it. So why did people think it would have an action against a virus? And there were different reasons for that. And people said, well, let's try it. And lo and behold, the meta-analysis seems to demonstrate that, in fact, that's the case. So you got a drug that has a great safety profile. It's cheap. It's available widely around the world.
Yep.
And maybe there is a place to use it with the correct dosage, obviously. But look, you could take a pretty large dose of ivermectin and end up with a tummy ache.
Sure.
And get over it. You can't take a really large dose of Tylenol and think that that's going to be okay.
Right.
Right. So to your point that you mentioned earlier, has a better safety profile than Tylenol. This is absolutely accurate.
Right.
I talked to a neurosurgeon who knows of this missionary working over in Africa who they would regularly give this ivermectin in a liquid form. You can get it in a liquid form or make it into a liquid form, whatever, to the people that they were around in their community to get rid of these parasites that you referred to.
Yeah.
And basically it's like you grab your tin cup. There's a big 5-gallon pill of it there. You dip it in and you take a shot.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like very, precise dosing going on.
Yeah.
It's that safe. I'm not recommending people do that.
Sure.
But I'm saying in those environments where you don't have the benefit of being able to package up a drug very precisely, neatly for people to use, but you have it in this form, they do this, and the kids aren't dropping dead, obviously, or developing, all kinds of bad.
Well, it goes back to one of the first things you said, Blaine, where, okay, yes, we were talking about the vaccine. Yes, maybe it might stop some of these things, but what is the cost of that? What are the risks that come with that? And when you look at ivermectin, could anybody say, if you take this, you're not going to get COVID? No, they couldn't say with any definitive certainty that would be the case. But they did have enough data to go, you know what, it's worth a shot because there's no risk here.
100%.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where a lot of a number of physicians were at that were trying different things and just trying to help people.
Yeah.
And to see that happened again, like I said, it's incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
So the report clearly shows that we think there was benefit and it shouldn't have been shut down the way it was shut down.
Yeah.
And to the point today, why is it not available today? This is a very good question. That is disappointing. Look, don't take veterinary medicine with the wrong dose, with supplements that you're supposed to, or with additions to the medicine that are to enhance its uptake through the skin. Because the vast majority of these things, you just put it on the skin of the animal, right? The hide of the animal.
Right.
And it's being absorbed. So there's different ways that they introduce that in. You don't necessarily want that, obviously. So I would never recommend someone just go and grab something like that. But honestly, so why can't we get it for other reasons?
Well, yeah. And it's not just that, like, you can't buy it here. You can't even buy it somewhere else and bring it in. Like, when I came back from Colombia, if they would have searched my bag, like, they would have taken all the ivermectin out of my bag. Like, it's insane.
So these are to me concerning developments. And again, this whole cancel culture, there's one narrative. You got to buy into it. You got to subscribe to it. If you stray, you're going to be told and you're going to be canceled one way or the other.
Yeah.
Whether it's we take the medicine away and we take you off of the internet, we regulate your license and you can't have a license if you're going to, prescribe ivermectin, which happened, right?
Yeah.
Physicians were pulled in through the college's office and things took place there. I think that's disappointing. So to the premier's benefit and to her credit, she's saying, hey, these regulatory bodies, maybe they shouldn't be so heavy-handed on what people are saying online on their social media sites. Let's give them some room to breathe.
The Jordan Peterson rule.
Yeah, let's give them some room to breathe and try things and do things. And let's have an open discussion about some of these things.
Yeah.
Now, if you mentioned ivermectin, you was just like, you were shut down.
Yeah.
Right? We can't do that in medicine. That's how we learn, for crying out loud. That is how we learn.
Well, and everybody's wired differently, right? And some people are wired to just, nope, this person told me this, okay, I'm going to believe it. I saw this on the news, I'm going to believe it. This, like some people are wired, it's just easier for them to go that route. Other people need to be convinced a little bit. And the biggest red flag for people who need to be convinced a little bit is to tell them that they're not allowed to ask questions. We're not allowed to have a discussion. Like, I'm a person who I don't learn very well from just like sitting and reading something. I I learn the best from actually sitting and having a dialogue with someone and asking questions and sort of beating it up from this angle and this angle until I get comfort that I've understood it well enough. I think there's a lot of people that's how they work. And the quickest way, and you talk about the fear porn, the quickest way to just throw gas on that flame is to say, this is the answer. And if you ask me a question, you're done. Wait, what? How is that supposed to give somebody confidence who needs to have that dialogue? It does exactly the opposite. And part of the problem, we're going to get into what may or may not be coming next. If there's another pandemic, I shouldn't say if, when there's going to be another one at some point, right? I don't know when it's going to be, but at some point we're going to see something else again. Those people who have so little trust in all of this, if the next one is more serious and does require more care, and they're going to be the ones going, screw that, I'm not doing this. No, you guys lied to me last time. Once bitten, twice shy.
And I think the whole point of the report was, okay, let's look at what we did. It was a data review. It was a data review. We looked at the data. We looked at data that was used to inform the people making the decisions. And what data was used, what data wasn't used, how much weight was put on it. Those kinds of things that say, how good was the data that was being used? And early on, we knew it was minimal.
Yeah.
So how do we learn from that? At the end of the day, what you just said is exactly the whole motivation. We were tasked in November of 22 to start this process and didn't release the final version until late in the fall of 25, actually, just this last year, or start of this year, and was given to the government with our recommendations.
Right.
It was, so can we do better next time? We sure hope so.
Yeah.
Because I do have, big issues with the lockdowns. I do have big issues with the way that information came out, those kinds of things. We can do better. Yeah. And why do we need this? Why is this so critical? And why I think there needs to be more traction, more discussion around this report, not to blow my own trumpet, is we have to learn from the mistakes we made so that we can then go to the public and say, here's what we learned.
Yeah.
Those people who are sitting on the sidelines skeptical, and that number's at an all-time high in terms of looking at the medical community. If you want to re-engage people in that, and the medical health professionals out there, and trust in them and what they're doing, you have to have this transparency.
Have to.
You can't hide it all and pretend like we did everything right when clearly we did.
And
right.
And this is a product of humility.
It's fine.
It is what you're describing is being humble enough to go, look, we know we didn't get it all right. We have to do better next time. So let's reflect on the choices we made so we can make better ones next time. I don't care where you sit on all of this. You hear somebody say that, it instantly should give you respect for them because they're humble enough to go, we got to get better.
One of the things I said to the zone medical director was, we need to have more open discussion about these things.
Yeah.
This is in the midst of them firing me. I said, we need to have more open dialogue because I said, honestly, there's lots that needs to be discussed here. And there's people on both sides of the fence. And when we did the report, we invited people who clearly had a different view than us, and some joined us initially and then all dropped out. And sadly, many of them dropped out for fear of their reputation or for fear of some kind of reprisal, or they just couldn't be, in their minds, they just felt like they couldn't be associated with people who are on the other side of the fence. And said, why not?
Yeah.
We invite you to be part of this so that we can get a very balanced pro-con view on everything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be con that some of my own, task force members were pro about, and they're going to be pro about some things I'm con about. That's good.
Yeah.
That's how I learn. If you don't challenge me, I'm going to think I'm right all day long. Mm-hmm. If someone starts to come to me and challenge me, I'm going to say, I'm going to have to just take a step back, and that's the humility factor, and say, maybe there is something here.
Yeah.
So let's give credit to some of these other, arguments and or modalities, methodologies, therapeutics, whatever it is. So to come back to therapeutics, since that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're having a good
time. We want to talk about it. We are, yeah.
We're having a good time. The whole idea about therapeutics we've talked briefly about. We've talked about hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, but there were a lot of others. Vitamin D was another one that I think was easy to do and was never recommended here in Alberta. Should have been, in my opinion. There's lots of family doctors I know who recommend this all day long.
Yeah.
Some have done
should be all the time anyway.
Yeah. A northern climate in the winter. Come on.
Yeah.
So again, and there's reasons that we do different things. Colchicine. A drug we use for gout, amongst other things. We use it in that pericarditis instances.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's one of the better anti-inflammatories we know of there, with a pretty great safety profile again.
Right.
That doesn't carry with it the same kind of toxicity that NSAIDs do, like Advil and things like that.
Right.
So we can use it. So again, why wasn't it used? And one of the reasons given, and we talk about this in the report, is because there was a fear of dehydration from it. Fear of dehydration. Okay, some people do get diarrhea with it, a very small number. Yeah. That's a side effect. Well, I think we can deal with that. Yeah. And instead it's just taken off the table. So these are the kind of things, again, when you look at them, this is not done, in isolation in terms of how we made our decisions. We looked at meta-analyses of these drugs used in different trials, some all over the world, some primarily in North America or wherever, but they had benefit. And so, look, put it all on the table and say, how can we use this in the midst of a pandemic? Why do you just sweep everything off the table? Yeah. In my opinion, which mostly was done. So to come back around to remdesivir, look, the report documents what we feel about it, and when we looked at the meta-analysis, it didn't have nearly the benefit that we could see without the safety issues.
Right. And how long
all these are therapeutics have?
Sorry to interrupt. How long was remdesivir used in an attempted treatment for COVID?
Oh, how long was it used? You mean when it was first introduced?
Yeah, and I'm assuming it was only used in really severe cases.
Yeah, I had to be hospitalized for it. And they used it primarily in the patients coming into the ICU. They were putting the orders for, I think, patients coming in for ICU admission.
Right.
And what COVID.
And what is the potential benefit of remdesivir?
Well, again, it's basically to stop the replication of the virus, right? It's to try to shut down. So basically, remdesivir was used. It's an antiviral.
Okay.
It was used with HIV, right?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Years and years ago. And it had a bit of a mixed review, I have to be honest, the way I read the literature in that regard. But now was brought forward to be used here. And so there were concerns, and it's well known, it's well documented in the literature with hepatotoxicity, i.e. liver, causing problems with the liver, hepatotoxicity, liver and liver failure, and acute kidney failure, right? And in that regard. So when I look at what we did on that chapter on therapeutics, what I saw was there were benefits that far outweighed the remdesivir, for instance, that had such a better safety profile.
Right. Because the risk with remdesivir is severe.
Well, the risk with remdesivir is there. It's many drugs we use have risk. Many drugs,
of course.
So I'm not an expert in the use of antivirals by any stretch. Do I think we could have used other drugs and not remdesivir? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There were places that didn't put remdesivir on or removed it for different reasons. I think the evidence was not there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That we should have used other drugs and probably not. Not that one.
Well, and there are reports you can look up yourself. Look up the risk factors with remdesivir, but there are reports out there that talk about the mortality rate from remdesivir just with healthy people. And some are as high as a 50% mortality rate for healthy people who take remdesivir. So if you gave 100 people, just took 100 people, lined them up, they're all healthy, you gave them all remdesivir, 50 of them would die, according to some of these reports. So, it's not exactly, and again, I recognize in the early days, you think somebody's going to die, well, why not try it?
Yeah.
But why not try some other things that don't have those risks? Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, some of these other things. So, yeah.
Sure. And monoclonal antibodies was another one. Again, if you look at the report, we've included those meta-analyses so people can look at it and make their own decision on how you do what you do.
Yeah.
And look at these things are open to debate to a certain extent, but But that is the point.
Yeah.
That is the point of not shutting down discussion. That is the point of saying, hey, you know what? Let's gather the information. Let's have a roundtable. Let's have the pro and con. And it doesn't have to be so binary. It doesn't have to be pro and con. Let's just have the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are kind of think, I got a good opinion of this particular therapeutic. Others, I don't. And here's why. You know what? Let's just talk about it. And we all learn from doing that. Like, for instance, in medicine, I have certain medications that I think are better than others when I give anesthetics.
Right.
And I have my reasons for doing that. And my colleagues use different ones, and it's perfectly fine.
Sure.
And we can talk about, and we do talk about during our rounds that we have on a regular basis, why we do the things that we do. And we learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the way it should always be. And sadly, we just didn't see enough of that during the pandemic, right? And so this is what happened.
Blaine, in your report, we're going to talk about the World Health Organization next and the number of countries that are just basically giving them control over those countries, should there be another one of these. If people are reading your report, give us sort of the top 3 things that you think people should maybe pay attention to and should learn about in your report. What are the top 3 areas that you think people should really dig in on and understand for themselves?
So the first thing, since you brought it up, I'll start there. And I put this in the vaccine chapter, was that we should have an opt-out mechanism in Alberta against any international body telling us what to do in the next pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I could see that I didn't feel that was helpful. I felt like we had a very top-down approach to managing the pandemic, and we had elites somewhere else in the world telling us how to manage our specific situation in Alberta, which is different than it is in other parts of the world.
Sure. Why is it different?
But people are different. The environment's different. How we live as a society and our interactions different.
Right.
People even within rural Alberta are very different, as you rightly pointed out, than people that lived in an urban environment.
Sure.
Where you're more crowded. It's more dense. You're bumping shoulders with people every day.
Yeah.
You move out in rural Alberta and you got room to breathe and move, and you're not around lots of people every day.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
Yeah. So you think about, should we have the same protocol in Alberta that we should in Africa or Brazil or, Argentina or wherever, India? It's different environment, different country, different population. We interact differently. It should be tailored to where you live.
Yeah. So that's why, that's one of the recommendations I made. And I think, and hopefully the Alberta government is working on that. They're working on other things as far as I know. And we mentioned already the one about the regulatory bodies, whether they're with medicine or engineers or you name it, whatever college that it's overseeing their membership, stick to what you do best, which is ensuring that your members are doing things that are safe and good for the public in this case as physicians. And that's the main thing, not these kind of policing activities that are going on right now, this cancel culture.
Yeah.
So that's all very good. The second thing is really the overarching one that we've been talking about the whole podcast, which is the science. Unlike what Anthony Fauci said, and he's the voice of science, science is never like that.
Right.
And this is what I've learned within my worldview. We learn by asking questions, creating questions, make a hypothesis, test it and see where it goes. And then we retest it. And then other people test it.
Yeah.
And so we keep going that way. And that's how we learn. That is science. Not shutting down the conversation, not stopping people from asking questions.
Yeah.
So the transparency needs to be there. So that's a big one. Opening up and people being transparent is another one. The third thing, and we didn't really deal much with this, but we had a pandemic protocol set in place before it happened,
right,
and it was pushed aside. I think that's a mistake. You make better decisions when you're not fearful,
panicking,
and you have a short timeline.
Yeah.
So part of get back to the report that all of us contributed in Nate, is while we're not under duress, let's have a good discussion about this and make better choices.
When it's not emotionally charged.
What we do.
Yeah.
And I would never encourage a locking down healthy populations again. I think
Right.
there was a lot of damage there. We have no idea.
Yeah.
The devastation on families,
There's big cost to that
businesses.
cure.
What was that cost?
Yeah.
Nobody is documenting. No, how do you document that?
Yeah.
And this was part of the Great Barrington Declaration, is that we don't know that cost,
Mhm.
and let's keep society working. The pandemic protocol that was already set up by David Redmond back years ago, actually put in place after 9/11 years later, but that was the impetus for it, is what do we do in an emergency? Pandemic is one type of emergency. There's others. This is what we do. And one of the things he said, and I think rightly so, is you keep your society moving, you keep it functioning,
Mhm.
and you deal with only that segment that needs help,
Yep.
needs whatever it is, in this case, quarantine. Okay, we quarantine the sick people. So that's another huge, I think, thing that we need to learn from this. I was told once when I was preparing for my final exam in medicine, you have to sit before a number of examiners, and they put you in these scenarios. It's called the oral exam.
Yeah.
It's a questions, and they put you in actual scenarios that you could face.
Sure.
And one of the people preparing me for the oral exam, he said, Blaine, if you ever find yourself going down a road you've never been down before when you're answering this particular question, whatever it is,
Mhm.
you're probably on the wrong road.
Right.
You better back up and go down a road that you've been down before.
Yeah.
And what did we do in the pandemic? We went down a road we've never gone
Yeah.
down before. Bad mistake,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Horrible mistake. Let's back up and let's learn from that, not do it again. Thirdly, what would I say? I think those are the biggest ones that I have off the top of my head.
Yeah.
That we need to learn from. Like, there's lots of good data there. If we're true in terms of, we believe in science,
Mhm.
the science is still being settled. Let's dig in and look at the data, and not develop narratives and just say, I'm sticking to the narrative.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
come back to that.
And that concept that you're describing there, I don't know how any rational person could argue with it. Right? Like, the people that are saying trust the science and trust the science and trust the science, well, then you need to ask these questions. You need to, like, what you're talking about here involves a great deal of logic and common sense, two things that are becoming harder and harder to find in this world. I hope that whoever is in charge the next time something like this happens takes that advice and goes about it in that way. Because I fear what would happen the next time, and the rebellion that we would see.
Mm.
I'm okay with the rebellion if it's something with the risk of something like COVID. I'm fearful of the rebellion if it's something that is far more dangerous to healthy people, far more dangerous. And that's not out of the realm of possibility, right? Like to say that if this happens again, it's automatically going to be, what COVID was. That's an ignorant statement. How would you know?
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
And I think what any of us can ask is that if and when it happens again, we take data and make our decisions based on what's actually happening, and do it with some common sense and logic and data, so that we make the decisions so that people can trust it. And you must see it all the time. I mean, I think trust is at an all-time low, and I think that if people all over the world, if the top doctors all over the world were taking the same approach that you're taking right now, I think that trust would gradually be increased. But yeah, I'm terribly fearful of what might happen next time. So
yeah.
Anyway, Blaine, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you for doing this. This was awesome. So appreciative of your friendship, and your awesome family and everything, and inviting me in your home and sharing this with our listeners. I think this is really, really going to resonate with people. And I'm not a big I told you so guy. So, I know that there will be people listening to this going, oh, I'm going to send this to my aunt who, was hard on me, or this or that or whatever. Guys, that's not what this is for. Yeah. But if you do have people, and this is how I'm going to encourage you to approach people who you want to learn from this, do it with grace and humility, and don't back them into a corner. Do it in a way where people can actually hear what you're trying to tell them. Because if you back them into a corner, if you go in with a big I told you so, they're going to get their back up. They're going to be resistant. do it with some humility, do it with some grace. We're asking for humility from, the people that are running the show. Then be a leader and show that humility back when saying, look, this isn't about I told you so. This is just about all of us, no matter where we sit on the spectrum of politics or medicine or whatever. Do it with that humility and show them, look, we all need to get better. We can all learn from this. Let's sit down and learn and have a rational conversation about it. And that's what I think you provided today, which was perfect. I don't think there's anybody, no matter where they sit, that can't hear what you said with at least an open mind. So, which was my goal in everything. So again, thank you, brother. This was awesome. And, I really hope this resonates with people. And again, for those of you who are worried about what, maybe you're injured from the vaccine, take a look at that product that I endorsed earlier from Dr. Peter McCullough and the Wellness Company. I've heard lots and lots of people have had great results from it. So, please take a look and invest in your health in that way. So, Blaine, thanks, brother. This was awesome.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, guys, new episode, Army of Great Men. It's in the books. We're recording this just before Christmas. So I know it's not politically correct. In some circles say Merry Christmas, but if anybody knows me, I'm not politically correct. So Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a great time with your families and safe and healthy. And we'll see everybody early in the new year. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great day.